All right, Elizabeth, take it away.
Okay, thank you so much, Jerry. Our speaker today is someone I know well. He's my husband, Frank Morris Howland, and we are in Massachusetts today, which is where we met in 1976. Frank and I were both freshmen at Harvard College. He graduated with a degree in social studies in 1980. I also graduated. Then Frank later went on to Stanford and got a PhD in economics, and I think he received that degree in 1988. His first job out of graduate school was with Wabash College, and he's still there today. He has been teaching economics at Wabash College for 32 years. He has an endowed chair. It's called the John W. Bachman Edward Jones Professor of Economics and Leadership. Frank's field is generally labor economics. He and Bert Barretto published a textbook in econometrics, which is basically math and economics, if you ask me. And that textbook came out in 2005. Frank really enjoys teaching, and I thought if he would talk to us about COVID and its impact on the economy, that would be a timely topic. So I think he's expecting questions at the end, so we don't have to mute and unmute. I told him to talk for no more than 20 minutes, but sometimes he gets enthusiastic, so Jerry, you may have to cut him off. All right, Frank Howland, we look forward to hearing what you have to say.
Okay, first I'm going to try to share my screen and let me know if this works. Thanks for that introduction, Elizabeth. Econometrics is really statistics in economics. Economics is permeated by mathematics, the whole field. Which is good and bad. One second, let me share the screen here. So, can you folks see that?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. All right, I will try to talk quickly, and I'll be glad to take questions at the end. You can easily reach me at Wabash College. I've got my email there. It's just howlandf@wabash.edu. And so I would welcome any questions, comments, suggestions. I think I'll be talking about this for probably the rest of my career. I'll be discussing this with my students. Anyway, clearly COVID-19 is an economic catastrophe. What I've got is a bunch of images, a little bit of words, but a lot of images, a lot of charts. I will try to explain them, and I'll be happy to go back to them in questions at the end of my talk here. So let me get started. Hold on a sec. One second. I have my cursor supposed to move here. Okay, here we go. So first chart here. This is trying to demonstrate that this is a huge economic catastrophe. So what you've got here is percent job losses in all the recessions since World War II, basically the last 75 years of economic history. And you can see the two prominent lines are the red line, which is the current recession, and the blue line, which is the Great Recession, which we all lived through between 2007 and 2009. The vertical axis is the losses in jobs. What percentage of jobs have been lost? And the horizontal axis is the number of months after the peak, just prior. So the peak was February of this year. We were in terrific shape economically. We had a 3.5% unemployment rate. We had reasonable economic growth, a little below 2% per year in real terms. And then the bottom fell out. Within a couple months, we lost 15%, almost 15% of jobs, 14.5%. And you can see that this red line here is it's a sharp V at the moment. It's moved back up a good deal. And right now we've lost only, relative to February, we're about a little over 9.5% of the jobs which were existing in February. People are not working at them as of June, as of this past month, June. And you can see that's by far the worst performance of any economic recession. It's way below all the other lines. The very worst that the Great Recession got to was a little bit below 6%, not quite 6.5% job loss. And so we really, and all the other recessions are milder and also pretty short. The question that we have for us now is what's going to happen next? How long will it take for us to get out? If you just follow the trajectory, it looks like we'll be back by the end of the year, but that's a huge question mark. So that's kind of a prelude. But there's a great deal we don't know, as I just indicated, how long this thing's going to last. So how much damage is going to occur over the course of this recession? How much has already been done? How many jobs are now permanently gone? That's unclear at the moment. How much is going to occur in the future? How will the economy change? So to give one example, there's a lot more telemedicine now than there was in the past. And will that be a permanent change? There are going to be a ton of restaurants which are gone. I don't think that will, well, we don't know how much social distancing there will be in the future. Will there be additional waves? Right now we're sort of going perhaps through the first wave still, but maybe it's the second wave. How much worse? How will people, businesses, and governments react? I'm in the education sector. What's going to happen this fall? Right now we're planning to have students at Wabash College in person, and we'll see whether we'll be able to maintain that throughout the fall. A much bigger question, I'd say, is what's going to happen in terms of K through 12 education. And of course, I'm just talking about one sector of the economy. What measures are going to be effective in combating the virus? What has been effective so far? How long will the virus last? How much morbidity, that is illness, and how much mortality will we have? So it's lots and lots of questions. So I'm going to talk very quickly about unemployment. I'm going to focus on that as the measure of economic damages. I'm going to talk a little bit about how individuals have and governments have reacted. I'm going to say a few words about kind of the obvious trade-off between the health and the economy. It's pretty complicated, actually. And I'll put in a plug for things like masks and vaccines at the end, talking about them as in terms of externalities, which is the term economists use. So, and I know that most of you know these things. I'll just review them quickly. So this is a very weird recession. The economy was shut down voluntarily by governments and by people, namely you and me. There was a massive sudden increase in unemployment, massive job loss, as I showed you. A huge decrease in output. We don't know how much. We don't really have any good measurement on that, although we have lots of suggestive measures. And I'm just going to talk about unemployment, not gross domestic product. There's a huge response by the federal government, huge amount of stimulus. If you compare this to what happened during the Great Recession, Congress has been much quicker and has jumped on this much more substantially than they did during the Great Recession in terms of passing all sorts of measures, spending on the order of, well, $2-3 trillion, and there may be more as we know. And of course, there's a debate right now over when to reopen the economy, how to do it. Let me look at the main measure of economic activity I'm going to focus on, which is the labor market. And what you have here is on the left is a picture in February, on the right is a picture in June. So imagine this as all the adults in the country, which is approximately 260 million. So that's everybody from 16 up through 100 years old. If you look at it, you'll see that the majority of people, a majority, is actually employed. So it was 158 million people, almost 159 million people back in February. There were 95 million people who were not in the labor force. That would include anybody who is taking care of children full-time, who's a student full-time, or who was retired. And if you see that little sliver of blue, that's the people who are unemployed. a little under 6 million people were unemployed. So at the time, the unemployment rate was about 3.5%. So if you add together employed and unemployed, only 3.5% of those people were unemployed. If you fast forward to June, 4 months later, we still have almost 18 million people counted as unemployed. If you compare the number of people who are not in the labor force, who left the labor force, who are not looking for a job, who don't have a job, that's 5 million more people are out of the labor force. And most of those people, of course, came from the ranks of employed. They said, I don't think I can find a job. I'm just not even going to look. So that's a 5 million people increase there. In terms of unemployment, 12 million more people were unemployed in June than were unemployed in February. So these are unprecedentedly large changes. And this is, as you saw, it's such a huge drop so quickly. This is even after 2 months, basically in May and June, of increases in employment from the bottom, which was in April. A little bit about which sectors have been hit the most. Again, you guys probably know this. If you look at this, all these lines are negative, and the x-axis is in terms of thousands, and actually leisure and hospitality, the red line toward the bottom, that tells you that over 4.5 million fewer people are working in leisure and hospitality than were working in February. Other notable places, well, not surprisingly, going from the top, retail trade, it's about 1.25 million. Services, both professional and business and education services, well over 1 million, close to 2 million. And then government, about 1.5 million fewer people. There are actually more people employed in the federal government, but a lot fewer people being employed in state and local. And that includes lots of school personnel who are unemployed. If you look at unemployment rates, this is a historical graph which goes over the past 14 years from 2006 to 2020. You can see the Great Recession, and there are 2 lines there. The top line in the Great Recession is males, the bottom line is females. So the males are orange, the females are blue. You can see the male unemployment rate for people 20 years and older got above 10% for several months with the Great Recession in 2009 for men, but topped out at 8% for women. And then you have this long decline all the way to 3.5% until February of this year, and then in March it spikes up. In this situation, this recession, the female unemployment rate now is 1% higher than the male unemployment rate. So that's actually a reversal from the last recession. I'll talk about this very quickly. What you see here is this is unemployment rates over the same period of time for people with different levels of education. And so one of the themes of this talk is the great diversity in terms of experiences. So a lot of people have been hit much harder than others in this. It's not surprising at all, but people who haven't graduated high school have the highest unemployment rate. People who graduated high school are at 12%. People who graduated from college are at 7% roughly right now in terms of unemployment. So this is a plug for Wabash College, Purdue University, you name it. Send your kids, your grandkids, make sure they go to college. They will do better. This graph shows you the unemployment, the losses in jobs for people who are in different wage levels. It's actually divided by quintiles, so by the top 20%. People who are the highest paid have lost about 6% relative to February. There's 6% fewer jobs for people who are the highest paid. In contrast, the lowest paid workers in our economy, the bottom 20%, have lost about 30% of their jobs. So this is as of mid-May. Things are probably a little bit better now, but they may be going downhill again for all these groups. And the other lines are in the middle there. So take-home message is people in the high-paid jobs have not been affected anywhere near as badly as the people in the lower-paid jobs. Let me just quickly mention effects on education. I've got those some numbers here. I wouldn't necessarily trust them, but basically, there have been huge losses at the K through 12 level in terms of education. I just have a notice here that I'm on battery saver mode, so I hope that things work out. And there's not much I can do about this at the moment, but I will talk quicker as a result. So oh yeah. So if you can find that thing, I have my technical assistant, my daughter. We drove 900 miles so that we could get her assistance. So let me continue. And, well, I got to get back here. Okay, so why has the economy tanked? What's happened? Well, two things. There's been government lockdowns, but put my economist hat on, people also, they act in their own best self-interest. So people acting in a self-interested way, here it is, on this side. So, sorry, that's my daughter, sorry.
There you go.
There you go. Thank goodness. Okay, I really appreciate it. Okay, so based on your own knowledge and belief, you are going to take measures to deal with this. So I don't know about you, I'm kind of a risk-averse person, so I've been very careful during this whole episode. And so what that means is that you're going to see a decline in economic activity despite, or not because of, but despite what the government says. Okay, so the governments do have an influence on us. I mean, they make recommendations, there are laws, you can't break the laws and so on. But we also start shutting down earlier than the government did. And I have some data on that. So this is a picture, let me try to explain it. What you have is, in the center there, it's day 0 is the day when there was a lockdown order, a stay-at-home order, things of that type. And in various measures of economic activity are on the y-axis. So these lines trend down, meaning that there's less economic activity relative to January. The key thing to see here is that people start in these states, which were the early lockdown states, they start cutting back on their visits, their spending, their employment at small businesses, the time they spend at work, about 10 days before the orders are issued. And by the time the orders are issued at the 0 mark, almost all the reduction in economic activity has already occurred for the early lockdown states. And then, so there's a lot less economic activity, it levels off over the course of the next 30 days. Let's look at the late lockdown states. So places which were a little bit more, where the governors were slower to act. There you can see economic activity actually declining about 18, 19 days before those later lockdown states actually issued their stay-at-home orders. And you can see that by the time the order comes into effect, people have already reduced their economic activity about as much as they're going to. So that's suggestive evidence that it's not the government necessarily, it's people also taking into their own actions, stop going to the store and so forth. This one's kind of cool and also kind of creepy. So there's a company called SafeGraph, and what they do is they harvest cell phone data, and they harvest it at the at sort of very, very fine detail for location. They know where you are. It's anonymized. They aggregate it, so they don't know it's Frank Howland. They know whether you're in Baskin Robbins or Home Depot or Walmart or Starbucks. So they can look at the economic activity, how many people are how much foot traffic there is in all these different types of businesses. This is for Texas. The top line, the blue line, is 2019, and the yellow line, the bottom line, is 2020. So you can see that. Let's pick the 1/3 from over the Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport. A tremendous drop in the number of people who are walking around at the Dallas-Fort Worth airport. If you look next to this, you can see Home Depot, actually a big increase relative to 2019 in the number of people going to Home Depot. So we all know what that's about. Let's start improving my home. So it's pretty cool, but it's also kind of creepy because they actually know not only that you're in Crawfordsville, Indiana, they know that you're walking into the courthouse. Here's another one, and so this is reservations for a whole bunch of different states, and it shows you there's been different activity in different places, and you can see that just about every state, Texas, New York, Georgia, Florida, California, and the whole United States, year-to-year change in the percent of diners who are making phone walk-in reservations and so forth falls pretty dramatically over the course of about 4 weeks to 0, and then only starts picking up again in the beginning of May. And it picks up the least in New York and the most in Florida and Georgia. But as of the beginning of July, we're still down 60% in terms, even in those states, in terms of people going to restaurants. So there's a trade-off, and let me talk about this quickly. I think you're pretty well aware of these things. Let's say a little bit about mortality. The news is bad for older people, and the news is bad for men. So the blue line is men, the orange line is females, and this just gives you death rates. And you can see the death rate per 1,000 people who've been infected. Well, actually, no, death rate per 1,000 people has been 4.5 for people who are 85 plus for men, and it's about a tenth of that for men who are 55 to 64, and it just goes down exponentially. So virtually no people below age 40 are dying of COVID. Of course, they're also some of them getting very ill. If you look at hospitalization, I think people are well aware that people in Blacks, American Indians, Hispanics have been much more likely to be hospitalized than Asians or whites. So whites, it's the lowest, and it's about 4 times higher, the hospitalization rate for Blacks and American Indians, and about 3 times higher for Hispanics than it is for whites. So let me just talk a little bit about the anti-lockdown arguments. So I think, there's a big, very, very strong reasons why we need to get the economy rolling again. There are huge losses in the economy. And so there have been a bunch of arguments, as you know, about, well, let's just get the economy started again. And they include things like the fatality rate is not that great. Well, it is for older people. It's pretty bad. Younger people are almost unaffected, and older people have lower life expectancies. And so in terms of years of life lost, it's not that bad. Certainly the 1919 flu was terrible. It affected people of working age. And so it was much, much worse in terms of years of life lost. Now, economists are really hard-hearted people. I don't completely share these views, but they're willing to put a value on life. So the current value that economists accept is about $10.8 million per person. They also sometimes put a value on years of life lost, $270,000. So some economists just say, let's do a cost-benefit analysis. And on that basis, they come to actually different conclusions as to whether you should open up the economy. Like I say, I think there's some severe ethical problems with that kind of view. I think that if you want to talk about what we ought to do, well, we got to recognize that some people are really more vulnerable than others. Older people, people with comorbidities, and so we really need to protect those. We need to prioritize some activities over others. So I'm biased, I have to admit, but I think that getting K through 12 education working is really, really important, because that'll help families with childcare, and I think there have been huge losses to kids in terms of education. So that's my 2 cents on it. Let me just mention, it's much, much worse in poor countries. It's just awful. So in India, there's really, the trade-off is, are you going to lose lives by infections, or are you going to lose lives by shutting down the economy? Either way, horrible things are going to happen. Finally, let me just mention the economic concept of an externality. An externality occurs when I don't take into account the effect of my actions on other people. So the classic example of that is a negative externality, which is pollution. So a polluting firm, if they're just concerned about the bottom line, they're not really caring whether they're causing damage in terms to people's lungs or poisoning them one way or the other. And so they tend to pollute too much. But there's also positive externalities, and positive externality is something where the problem there is I may not do enough of the thing which helps others. So there are two really important positive externalities that you can think of in terms of, there are probably more, but let me just mention two in terms of our current predicament. Vaccines are obviously a huge positive externality. So when we get a vaccine, the fact that you and I get inoculated and we're vaccinated means that we can't get sick, which means that we're not going to be infecting other people. And so you might say, hey, it's really inconvenient and I'm not going to get super sick because I'm 21 or something like that, and so I'm not going to get the vaccine. Problem is, you're going to help out a lot of other people if you get vaccinated. The same thing is also true of masks. So if you wear a mask, you're less likely to infect other people. Now, when you wear the mask, my glasses fog up. I feel uncomfortable. If I'm exercising, it's a problem. If I'm trying to talk through a mask, which I'm gonna have to do this fall, I'm buying a mic, by the way, then it's a real problem, okay? So, but it's gonna help a lot of people. So let me just put in a plug for this, for developing vaccines. I think it's really, really important, and for wearing masks. So in conclusion, let me just say, I welcome your questions. It's been a huge recession. It's a major catastrophe already. We don't know how much worse it's going to get. We don't even know how much the economy is going to change as a result of this. There are four key ideas in economics that I want to just highlight. Data and measurement are really important. And one thing this catastrophe has done is it's focused a lot of attention on trying to get more timely information. So getting information on foot traffic, which we'll have almost instantaneously, is really important. The GDP that comes out only 4 times a year, only every 3 months. It's a little too late for that. I want to emphasize self-interested behavior. People will undertake actions to protect themselves based on their knowledge and beliefs. There are trade-offs, big trade-offs, and then finally I mentioned externalities. And so with that, I've done, and I will stop sharing the screen, but I can bring it back if need be, and I'll be happy to answer questions. So thanks very much for now.
Thanks, Frank. I do have a couple of questions, and one of them being the issue about, you said data and getting the right numbers. Are we getting the right numbers? I mean, the whole thing about, you hear about the numbers of somebody who dies from a heart attack but is in the hospital, and he goes there, has a heart attack, and they say, oh geez, he had COVID. So they count it as a COVID death, as I understand. Now, I don't know if that's true or not, but that's, I'm trying to figure out, are those people showing as a COVID death, or is they showing as another type of mortality?
I'm not an epidemiologist. Nor a doctor, so I can't really tell you to what extent that's happening. I know that different states have adopted different policies about which deaths they're going to count, and some states, the quality of their data varies. If you look at the Indiana site, you'll see that they get the reports lag, right? So you'll hear like about 19 additional deaths. Some of them occurred a week ago, and you'll also see in Indiana we have like a bunch of probable deaths which are not being counted. So I don't know, 150, 200 deaths which are not counted as official, but they're probable. I really can't answer. I would mention that one thing you can look at is you can look at you can compare mortality to the average mortality over the past year or past 5 years. A problem with that is that it's quite possible that people are dying as a result of the measures that we've taken. If you don't get elective surgery and then you die because the surgery comes too late, that will increase mortality. So you can look at, I guess you can also look at mortality in terms of people with symptoms. You know, so if you look at people who are in the hospital for pneumonia or other lung-related things, and you compare it to previous years, I don't think that we can get an entirely accurate measure, and I don't think we will know for quite a while what the true mortality has been. Personally, I tend to think that probably it's not an exaggeration, but I can't really defend that. I don't have direct knowledge.
Two questions. One is that the revenue structure for the state and local government has greatly been destroyed with this event. You know, we're looking at 15-20% drops in revenue. First question. Second question is the U.S. debt as a share of GDP is doubling pretty rapidly. What's the effect of that?
Both are really excellent points. So I was trying to get some information on the state revenue loss. I agree with you; it's very large. So if you think about income taxes, you think about casino revenues, you think about people who are not going to be able to pay their property taxes. It's all very large. All I saw was an estimate from Michael Hicks at Ball State, and they were estimating, they had a very wide range for the state revenues, not the county revenues, but the state revenues, between 4 and 11% drop. I wouldn't be surprised if it'd go higher than that for 2020, and between 1 and 10% drop for 2021. Now, obviously, it's really hard to know what's going to happen this year, and let alone next year. I think that's a huge problem. I was heartened to see that the education budget has not been cut. But I know that we're going to have to spend a lot of money at Wabash College simply trying to provide a safer workplace. I don't know what's going to happen K through 12. So I think that is a really big problem for state and local governments. They're going to have to make some very, very difficult choices as to what to cut. So you're right, and we don't yet know the full impact, but it's going to be large. I think that personally, okay, this is my personal view. Congress should send money to states, but then that gets directly to your second really salient point, Morris, which is the debt. I would tend to think that we should be willing to spend money in emergencies because the longer economic activity is cut off, the more we're going to see permanent losses. So just as an example of a restaurant, if a restaurant can stay open, if they get enough traffic to stay open, then you don't lose that. But at a certain point, all restaurants are going to collapse. Not all restaurants, but many restaurants wouldn't survive. And the same thing's going to happen for lots of other businesses. And then you lose something permanent. Of course, you can sell the ovens and the material, but the working relationships get lost. The evidence from the last recession is that we haven't had large inflation. What we need to do is we need to get the economy to be healthy again, and then there's no question that we, our kids, our grandkids are going to have to pay higher taxes as a result of this. I think there's no way out of it other than a financial collapse. And so I myself, I wouldn't worry as much. And I think that obviously a lot of the money has been spent not super efficiently, but it was really important to put people back on, to support people and to keep businesses open. So I realize that's an unsatisfactory answer.
Frank, if I remember what I've read in the last few weeks, historically the growth of jobs has come from small business. And small business tends to be woefully undercapitalized. Is there hope there for anything to get started?
It's hard to answer that one, Sean. Yeah, I don't really know what to say to that. I think that we need to work really hard on I think we do need to work on the health aspects of this so that people feel secure. I really can't answer that as much because I think the small businesses are inevitably not going to be helped as much as the larger firms. Sorry, I can't give you a good answer to that.
Frank, yesterday, I believe Harvard announced that they were going to do online classes only for the fall. Do you have a feel for which way the wind is blowing at Wabash? I know the plan was to be in-person classes at Wabash. Do you think that's still going to occur?
That's the plan. We and all other institutions are taking various steps to try to make it possible. So we are going to be we're going to have the students monitor themselves. We're going to strongly encourage them to quarantine if they get sick. We're taking all sorts of social distancing measures that we're going to be teaching in unusual places because we need much more room. We're having we're going to have one-way staircases, and the dining hall experience will be nothing like it was in the past. It's just going to be grab and go, and we're going to do the best we can. I think a lot depends. A lot is going to have to depend upon luck. You have all sorts of. We believe that we need to. We're not going to present 100% in-person classes. We're going to have some online classes, or why I have to say I call them virtual classes. Online is a no-no for this sort of thing, but and I think it'll depend upon. It's not completely under our control because parents may say kids come home. We don't yet know. We think that most students will come back. We did pretty well in terms of our recruiting, but we really are at the mercy of larger forces here. So we're doing what we can. I don't know. I would say that we have maybe. It's impossible to know, but there's a big chance that we will not. There's unfortunately a chance that we'll go all online, and then I think it'll be really bad for us.
Frank, do you want to talk about the schedule, Wabash schedule, the condensing of classes?
Oh, yeah. So like many other places, you want to mute. Many other places, we're starting August 12th, which we usually start 2 weeks later, and we're ending at Thanksgiving. We'll have exams before Thanksgiving. So let's hope we guess right in terms of the timing of this thing. I worry about sports. I think at most we'll have like 5 football games. I wouldn't be surprised at all if we have 0. We have a beautiful football stadium we just built.
If Purdue can make it work with 33,000 students, Wabash ought to make it work with 800.
I agree, and I think that we have better. Our students are better at obeying rules, but they're still 18 to 22-year-old young men. We are better. We are more personalized, and we can work around various things. I know that and we also have greater morale. So we are completely dedicated to teaching our students. So we have advantages. We have some disadvantages in terms of. I think that at large institutions they can get some economies of scale in terms of testing people. So that's a difficulty for us. But yeah, we're also in a better spot because we are here in Crawfordsville, so we're a little bit isolated. And so if we were in a big city, I think it'd be tougher for us.
Any other questions? Well, hearing none.
I was wondering, as far as the student body and the faculty at Wabash, are there plans that you're aware of that they would go into testing, either voluntary or mandatory COVID testing, or antibody testing?
So we're going to be buying test capability. I think that I know that we'll test people who show symptoms. I would certainly like to have, I would prefer to have everybody tested at the beginning of the year, and then we have a continued testing program. There are some possibilities that you could pool tests. So you could put a bunch of samples together and test them all at once. And then if something shows up, then you do more work. I think we are still negotiating, still trying to get the capability. I know that at some schools, we are pretty rich, but we're nowhere near as rich as places like as some schools. So there's some schools where like Yale, where they're only going to have 3/4 of the students. They're going in the spring, in the fall, sophomores will not be on campus, and the spring freshmen will not be on campus. At Yale, they're going to test everybody, like, often. I wish we could do that. I think that would make it better, but that's not yet assured to us. We will definitely have testing capability. I can't tell you, I don't know about the specifics of which types of tests we'll do. I'm sure we'll do the ones which are more accurate.
Thanks.
All right, well, this is, thanks, Frank, for taking the time to do this. It was interesting, enlightening, and in some respects pretty sobering. But what you say makes a lot of sense, passes my common sense test anyway. So thanks very much for being here. And, we'd extend the invitation for you to join the club. We'd love to see you. Elizabeth would have somebody to eat lunch with then.
I really appreciate that. I guess I'd say that our president, Wabash College, Scott Feller, urged that people be compassionate and that we care for each other. I guess I'm still on the fence on joining Kiwanis, but I think that civic institutions are really important. I think that Crawfordsville has done a pretty good job of kind of keeping the social fabric together. The sorts of things you mentioned, helping people out, those are really important at times like this. So, and I appreciate it. And I wish I had more definitive things to say. I would certainly welcome people's questions and suggestions. As I say, this is going to be an ongoing topic. So thank you very much for having me.
All right, thanks. Our speaker next week is to be determined. Have not found somebody for that yet. However, on the 23rd, we'll have Dr. Scott Douglas from the Montgomery County Health Department. And then on the 30th, Dr. Scott Feller, the new president of the college, is going to speak to us. I heard from Jim Amadon this morning saying that Scott would be available. So I'm looking forward to that. So like I said earlier, make sure you reach out to somebody this week. Make sure that they're doing okay. Check on them, care for them if you can help. And please, encourage them to attend. Closing thought for the day. The only way people will know what you believe is by the things you say and do. If you're not consistent in the things you say and do, no one will know what you believe. And on that note, I call the meeting adjourned.